Good morning. Here's the second episode of my video blog on the antique fashion prints. Today I would like to show you the process for them to make those engravings, and well, at least one of them. Let's go closer. The engraving was made with a copper plate, and the engraver was reproducing a drawing by using multiple array of small strokes, and all those little lines, they cross, they make dots and all sorts of details. If you take a look at that lace, it's incredibly detailed. And if you go a little bit to the headdress, I'm trying to not have a shadow on it. There you go. You can see all the details, the flowers, the lace, the hair, the ribbons. It's just amazingly detailed. It's absolutely lovely. So I would like to show you a copper plate. So I'm going to pause for a second. Here's a copper plate. This was a plate used for printing. Unfortunately, it's not a fashion print on it. It is actually 6 little landscapes with little houses and people and rivers and trees and so forth. And here's one a little more closely. This little landscape was actually made with a process called etching. The copper plate was covered with a thin layer of wax. And then with his tools, the engraver would use those tools to scratch the wax on that copper plate, and removing the wax and making lines and dots and crosses and all sorts of things. Once that design was reproduced on the copper plate with the wax on it, they would put an acid on it, and the acid would eat up the copper where the wax had been removed. And if they leave the acid longer, of course it would make much deeper lines or much deeper areas that have been removed. You can really see all the textures of those lines, and take a look at this. It's just amazing. So this was they were using. After that, the ink would go inside those lines and those where the copper had been eaten up by the acid, and a press would print it on paper. I'm back here with 2 colored plates, and once they had the engraving, the black and white image, the coloring process was simply done with stencils. They would use 1 stencil per color. One blue stencil, 1 brown stencil. Actually, they had two different browns in there, red and pink and green, and all those colors, where each one had its own stencil. But they would actually do several plates at a time, so they would line them up and then put the color. But if you take a look, I have 2 engravings of the same exact engraving, and you can see from one to the other, especially on the blue dress, what the color difference. I bet the brush with the color on the left was a little less loaded with color than the one on the right was more fresh, I guess. So you can see the difference, but it's all hand colored almost by stencil, by way of stencils. Those are absolutely lovely. I'm not sure what year, but probably in the 1860s or so. I am not sure. Now I want to show you on this. You have the signature. The engravers were just as celebrated as the actual designer and person that did the drawing to begin with. And you had both names here on this one. You had the engraver on one side and the designer on the other side. I mean, the person that did the drawing to begin with. And then it says who actually printed this. So this is pretty cute. I like it. And let's finish with a little detail on these little ladies. So next time I might talk to you about a different process they used later, but these were the early processes.